Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time it's a new series where I talk about comic book characters and their transition to the big screen. You know, we have a lot to work with when it comes to superheroes and supervillains. In most videos, I'll probably try to talk about three characters, and I'll give you my opinions on them when it comes to their transition or to the big screen, the actors that portray them, the way they were written on the screen, and all of that, in comparison or contrast to the way they are in the actual comic books. Now, I'm not going to go over, obviously, every major story for these characters. I've been out of the loop for many, many years, and, I didn't read every single thing on them. But I have a decent amount of information on them and a decent amount of knowledge on each of these characters. And I've seen the movies, so maybe we'll get a little discussion going. The first character, I want to talk about is Venom. This is going to be a Spider-Man, spider-centric discussion video. We'll talk about Venom first, all right? So, we've had two actors play Venom over the last, 13 years, something like that. The first one was Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3 in 2007. That was the last Sam Raimi Spider-Man film and wasn't very good for many reasons. And then we have Tom Hardy playing Venom in now what's going to be added to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that came out in 2018 with a sequel coming out, I think, at the end of this year. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, so we have two portrayals of Venom on the silver screen. And I'll show some of the books I have, the first appearances. Some of the topics I'll talk about when it comes to characters, I don't have their first appearance, so I won't be showing them. But for the ones that I do, I'll show them. Here we have, this is where Venom first showed up. His first full appearance. He showed up in cameo in the 2 issues beforehand. All right? So, let's start off with Topher Grace. I've said it before, I don't think he was, in my view, really the Venom that the Todd McFarlane Venom. That's what this is. The Todd McFarlane Venom, which became the Eric Larson Venom, which became the Mark Bagley Venom, and so on. That version that was in the movie was not the same version in the comics, and that's okay. Sometimes Hollywood changes the characters up a little bit, whether it's in appearance or whether it's in story, so that it, in their view, fits or makes more sense on the silver screen. Sometimes it works very well, as I'll talk about later in the series, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I don't think it worked very well in Spider-Man 3. I don't like the way he looked. I don't think the actor fit the physicality, or the physique rather, of Eddie Brock in the comics. Eddie Brock, kind of looked like a Brock Lesnar type character. And then you have Topher Grace. No insult to him, his acting or whatever, but he just wasn't right for the role. I think he was very miscast in that part. And I think that the character wasn't written too well in that movie to begin with. And a character like Venom, as you saw in that movie, he was almost like a side villain. Venom is a big thing. For anybody watching that movie and they see Venom and they're like, oh, I guess he wasn't really that much of a big deal in the comics. No, Venom was a big deal in the comics. It's just that it really put a little bit of a stain on Venom on the silver screen with that portrayal. That's just my opinion. Let's jump to Tom Hardy now. We'll spend a little bit of time with this one. Was Tom Hardy better than Topher Grace? Well, physically, I think he was. He looked, physically better than Topher Grace to fit more of the Venom in the comics. But still, before I get to this, the costume. The costume was a little bit better. I mean, I know I say a little bit better. I mean, it was better than the Sam Raimi version of Venom. But with the portrayal of Eddie Brock in that movie and the Venom costume, is it just me or does something seem a little off? It's still not the Venom from the comics. Now, I made this point earlier that yeah, it's okay to change things around to make it make sense in Hollywood. I get that, but it just felt like there was something off. And I found myself laughing more when I watched it. You know, when the suit would talk to him. You know, because the suit talks to him in the comics, right? Because it's an alien suit. But every time that suit talked, I just started laughing because it just sounded so funny. Now, I don't know if that was the intention, that they weren't taking it too seriously, but instead of what I felt should have been a creepy portrayal of that suit, it turned out to be pretty comical. It's funny to watch, but I don't think it was necessarily a very good movie or necessarily a very good portrayal. Better than Spider-Man 3, but not much better. Now let's move on to the Green Goblin. Here we have Spider-Man. This is he first showed up in this one. Here we have the Green Goblin riding the broomstick before he had the glider, which was, I think, issue 17. The Green Goblin, some argue, is Spider-Man's #1 villain. The way the Joker is to Batman, the way Lex Luthor is to Superman, the Green Goblin is to Spider-Man. Some might say Dr. Octopus is. Some people may say Venom is. But those three characters I just mentioned, Doc Ock, Venom, and the Green Goblin, they are very important in Spider-Man's world when it comes to villains. So he first showed up, the Green Goblin, in the first Sam Raimi movie, played by Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe. He was in more of wasn't necessarily in a costume as he was in like some sort of armor and all of that. What did I think of the portrayal? I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all. Not that the actor was a wrong choice, like Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3. I think he was fine, you know, when he was Norman Osborn. But when he was the Green Goblin, he just sounded so corny. It was just so over the top. And maybe that's what Sam Raimi was going for, over the top. Then Norman Osborn showed up in the new reboot of Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. All those movies, there were two of them. You had The Amazing Spider-Man. Wait, was it? Yeah, it was The Amazing Spider-Man, right? Or something like that. I don't even remember. Those movies were awful. Those movies are just absolutely awful. The Norman Osborn in those movies, he was on his deathbed. And didn't he die? You didn't even see him in the first one. Then he died in the second one. And then his son, Harry Osborn, became the Green Goblin. That was just a shit show. I don't know what the hell they were doing. I think they were prepping the Sinister Six, but man, that just was awful. It was just another awful performance. I don't think he was good at all. I don't think the character was written. I don't think they even knew, whoever wrote that, was planning that, Sony, I guess, knew where the hell they were going with this. The Sinister Six, I guess, but it just seemed like it was just terrible. So the portrayal of the Green Goblin on the screen for me just really didn't work that much. I just didn't enjoy it. Now for the last one in this video, we're going to talk about none other than Spider-Man. We've seen quite a few Spider-Men over the years since when did the first movie come out? 2002. So 18 years ago, almost 18 years ago to the day, as of this recording. The first one was played by Tobey Maguire. And they made a few changes to him in the movie. You know, instead of Tobey Maguire building, you know, the Spider-Man building the web shooters, it was just natural. It shot out. I thought that was pretty good. I know in the comics, Peter Parker built his own web shooter, and I often wondered why. Geez, how come this kid is not a millionaire if he could create something like that? So in the movie, it's sort of like, well, it's natural for him just to shoot it out of his wrists. I mean, I think they later changed that in, I think, the Garfield movies, and those movies are just terrible. And they changed it in the Tom Holland ones. But anyway, getting back to Tobey Maguire, I thought he was pretty good. I thought that was a really good portrayal of Spider-Man. He looked like Peter Parker. He acted like Spider-Man in the comics, and I thought that he was believable in that character. And by the time we get to Spider-Man 3, which was the worst one, with the Venom and all that stuff, you could tell he really wasn't into it, and I don't blame him. It just was a bad movie, and it's a shame it went out that way. Now let's talk about the next one, briefly. Andrew Garfield. Horrible. Didn't look like the character from the comics. How was he as when he was in the costume? I guess he was okay. He wasn't that bad, but every time I just had trouble accepting Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. It just didn't work for me. I saw the first one in the movies with my wife. She couldn't stand this one at all. And yeah, I was with her. We went to go see that in the movies, and I was like, this is terrible. And when the second one came out, I said to myself, I'm not seeing that in the movies. And I saw it when it eventually was on demand or TV or whatever, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh my god, this is worse than Spider-Man 3. It really is. It's just It's just all over the place. Um, so I really didn't like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Again, not saying anything bad about the actor. Maybe he's good in other things. I'm not taking anything away from him. But I think in that role, it was another miscast. He was miscast. Last one, Tom Holland. I think he's a good Spider-Man. He comes off as Peter Parker to me, whereas Andrew Garfield didn't. Peter, he comes off, that nervous little teen, like very much like the Ditko, very much the way Ditko portrayed him as he has drawn him in the comics. Where everyone seems on edge, and he comes off a little on edge. Very nervous about himself and all that. That's what Peter Parker is. And I thought Tom Holland again did a great job. He comes off very much like the way I see Spider-Man from my reading of the early Silver Age and other things about the character. So is there like a Spider-Man series in the 70s? I'm not even going to go over that. I don't know anything about it. It looked like shit. Um, Maybe it's good. I don't know. But I'm just going over the movies. um, so I think Tom Holland is probably the best one. But Tobey Maguire is pretty good. Andrew Garfield, again, not so good. Although what I would find pretty interesting when it comes to Spider-Man, and now that the multiverse has been introduced, it would be interesting if Spider-Man were to go to some sort of multiverse in a plot, an upcoming movie, and encounter the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That I think would be somewhat interesting. It may not make too much sense, but it would be interesting. But then again, though, some of these movies and comics don't make sense to begin with. So what the hell? So that's my review on those three characters in the movies. Spider-Man, pretty good, with the exception of Andrew Garfield. Venom and Green Goblin, not so much. Uh, uh, there's a little bit of good in some of these. All of them have a little bit of good, but some just don't. And that's just my opinion on these. What do you think? Did you like the portrayal of the Green Goblin in the movies? Who's your favorite Spider-Man so far and why? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.